Good morning and welcome to Odoo Live. My name is Noel, Community Manager here at Odoo San Francisco. Today, I am joined by Brett, one of our business advisors, to talk about our Odoo sales tutorial regarding price lists. Welcome, Brett.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. Today's going to be a relatively short webinar in the grand scheme of our webinar lengths. It's probably going to be about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll leave time for questions.
Yes, exactly. So regarding questions, if you have any, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will get to them at the end during our Q&A session. Also, if you showed up late, feel free to use the same link that you're using to watch this video now to watch this presentation after we're finished live. And then you can watch it anytime, day or night, whenever it is convenient for you. So without further ado, take it away, Brett.
Right, thanks, Noel. So let's see. So today we're going to focus specifically on price lists in sales. Were you sharing my screen right now?
We absolutely are.
Yeah, so the point of today is to cover a number of different methods of using price lists in sales. But first, I just want to introduce myself. I'm a business advisor here at San Francisco. I've done a few of these webinars before. Maybe you've seen one or two, but I haven't done one in a while, actually. So this is kind of fun. But my role here as an advisor is to meet with people, find out what they're looking for in a business software, find out maybe what they're using right now, what they like about what they're using right now, what they don't like, and what is on their wish list. And then I go through showing Odoo and seeing how it might be fit for their needs. So if you want, at any point, you can go ahead and either schedule a demo or just an initial meeting, just a conversation with me. You'll see on the screen right here, I've got a link to my calendar. You're welcome to use that. And you can also email me too, and I think we'll put the email up at some point too. But yeah, that's my general role as a business advisor. And if you guys decide, through our evaluation to use Odoo, then I actually become an account manager too. But no, today I'm just going to be strictly showing functional aspects of the software, specifically as it pertains to price lists. Let's go ahead and, there it is. There's the email. If you want to, you can use that email to contact me directly. Now, keep in mind, I'm actually only really supposed to work with people in North America, but if you are in Europe or Bulgaria or whatever, and you want to reach out to me, a lot of times I can at least point you in the right direction or maybe put you in touch with somebody closer to your area. So, feel free to reach out to me no matter what. Great. So, today's agenda. First off, we're going to talk about the very basics of price handling in Odoo. In other words, the way Odoo handles prices no matter what, just by default, because it's a good baseline to understand that real quick. Then we're going to start talking about the actual price lists capability. There's two main ways to do price lists specifically, and the first one is when we do multiple pricing on the product page. So we're going to cover that. Then it's going to be prices from formulas, which is the other way to do price lists, and it's a lot more advanced, but borrows from the same functionality as the first way. So we're going to cover those two methods, and we're going to do examples as we go. And then fourth, we're going to cover how price lists affect your e-commerce sales. So if you're doing sales through the website with Odoo, then I'm going to show you how that actually comes into play there. And finally, point of sale price lists, because it can also apply to that if you're doing face-to-face brick and mortar kind of transactions like that. So the first thing, basic price handling. So in Odoo, basic price handling is really simple by design. It is pretty straightforward, and you can understand it very easily just through playing around with it very briefly. But there are a couple of little, there's some nuances to it and some things that it's good for you to understand. Basically, it's a price field. It's just a field of data on the product page. And what you'll find is that on every individual order, you can override that and you can update the price. And I'll show you, how you can do that and also what that does and doesn't do. You'll also see that you can apply discounts per order line. That's an aspect of the pricing if you need to do that. And also I'm going to point out that products can have a negative price if necessary and point out why you might want to do that. So it's simple, it's basic, but we'll just blaze through it really fast with an example. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to this demo database right here. Is that on screen? Probably.
Yep.
All right, great. Okay, so I have a few modules installed here, and one cool thing about doing a price list demo is it actually does cover several different modules that we have in here. It's going to talk about contacts and your customers. It's going to involve sales, of course, and also these channels of website and e-commerce and point of sale. And it also relates to the products too, which you can kind of think of as a function of inventory if you want. But yeah, so first off, what I want to do is I'm going to open up our product catalog. Multiple places you can access that, but I'm just going to go into sales. I'm going to go into the catalog right here. And for the sake of this demo, let's just say that we as a company, we're just a company that sells costumes. And so hence these costumes right here. So, okay, I have a Rhino costume, pig costume, tiger, jellyfish. And as you can see, we have a bunch on hand and they have different prices. Now this is what we're talking about with basic standard pricing. We have basically one field right here called sales price. And keep in mind, the price of a pig costume is $150. We'll cover, products in great detail during inventory webinars, and there's, plenty of content out there. So I'm going to skip over all the details of the products, aside from the fact that in this very basic method of handling prices, the default method, we basically just have one field on the product, and that's going to determine what our default prices are. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a sale order real quick. I'm going to click on orders. I'm going to make a new sale order. This should be pretty straightforward and probably very basic to most people that are watching this right now. But maybe this is the first time you've seen a sale order done in Odoo. It's pretty intuitive, pretty straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and either select one of my existing customers. Sure, let's do that. This guy right here. And I'm going to go ahead and just keep the same invoice address, same delivery. I'm not going to change any of that. And I'm going to go ahead and ignore this for now. There's a reason why I'm ignoring it. It's just basic public pricing. Just think of it that way, because we're still just showing the basic standard pricing. And I'm going to go ahead and add a product. I'm going to choose the pig costume that we talked about. Remember, it's $150. And as soon as I choose that, there it is, $150. So all we saw is that as soon as I select a product, it's just looking at that basic sales price field right there. Has nothing to do with price lists exactly. There's no formulas. There's nothing complicated about it. But like I said, there are ways that you can play around with that, even if you're using the standard form. If you need to, if you have user access to, which most people would by default, you can go ahead and click on this, and you can change it to 75. So I just clicked on it. I manually overrid. Is that the past tense? Overrided that price right there, and I put 75, and you can confirm the sale. Now, I think it's just really important that you know this, and anybody who's played with Odoo for a little while should know this, but I entered this on this order, and it doesn't actually override or actually mess with the product itself. So if I go into the products list right here and I look at the pig costume, that field has not changed. It's still $150. So I would call that an order-specific price. So you can do that. That's an option. You're allowed to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just going to be on this particular order. It doesn't matter, what it says in the price field. In addition to that, if I do another order real quick for a different person, this guy, with that same pig costume, if you want to, you can also do a discount. So I just overrode the price right there before, but if you want to, you can do 50% off. And that's just something you enable in configuration settings for sales. So if you do 70% or 50% off, then what it does is you have this original price right here, you're applying a 50% discount, and then you have a total of 75. Two ways to kind of accomplish the same goal. And there's use cases for either. Maybe you want the customer to know that they're getting a special price. Maybe for whatever reason, you just need the customer to think, yeah, that's their price. And then if you print out a order form and you're using this method, sure, let's see. Then in this case, it actually applies like that, and it shows you just in line how that is right there. So very basic stuff, and most of you guys probably understand all that already, but I did want you to know that. And then one last thing, if I do yet another order for a different person, I'm going to go ahead and create a person on the fly. I'm going to call her Lindsay. Just one word, no last name, just Lindsay. If I add a couple of items right here, sometimes we get this question, yes, you can do a discount per order line, but what if you are selling several things? Do you have to do a discount for every single thing? And the answer is, if it's a percentage, yes, by default, you do need to do it that way. There's been people that have us do a very simple development to do a single discount percentage, and that is actually a relatively easy development. It's really basically just a new field and then a very simple calculation. But another alternative that we often suggest, if it's just a dollar discount, if you're taking $50 off or something like that, one very easy thing you could do is you add a line item and you basically call it $50 discount. And this is similar to how they do it in QuickBooks a lot of the times too. It's a line item. I'm just going to call it a consumable line item, and you can do a -50. That's fine. You're allowed to do that. And so I've just added a thing. This is a new product I created on the fly. It's $50 off. So if you ever have just a fixed price off requirement like that, you can do it that way. Technically, we also have coupon codes and promo codes, and those can be used as well. And those might be a better option for you at some point, but I don't think we're going to cover that today. We can maybe talk about it if you guys have questions about it. Okay, so that's enough about basic pricing. That's basic price handling right there. Should be very intuitive, should make a lot of sense. Now let's go into actual, what I would call price lists. So part 2. This is where we're going to be able to handle multiple pricing on the product page. So there's 2 ways, like I said, of doing price lists. This is the first of those 2 ways. And it's basically handled mostly on the product page itself. And it's great for a couple of use cases. It's really easy and intuitive for when you have what we call volume pricing. In other words, if you sell a product and you can sell it in different quantities, and depending on the quantity that you're selling, you get a different price. So maybe if I sell less than 10 costumes, I get one price. But then if I sell between 10 and 20, I get a different price. And between 20 and 50, a different price. So this method actually works really well for that, and I'll show you that. And it's not formulas, so it's not very complicated, this method. It's great for fixed prices and very, very basic discounts, but it's pretty straightforward once you see it. It can be applied seasonally. You'll see there's an option for it where you get to choose the date range where this price list applies. So if for the month of December, or maybe the period between Thanksgiving and Christmas or something, if there's standard pricing that is applied every single year, you can just choose a date range right there, and I'll show you that. And also, this is where we start getting to, because technically these are actual price lists, so if you want to, you can assign it on a customer-by-customer basis. And I'll show you that too. So let's go back into the demo database. And it's basically, you need to go to configuration. You need to go to configuration settings for sales specifically. It's in the sales app. And right here, it's called multiple sales prices per product, and it's this thing right here. I actually already have it enabled, and I actually learned in preparing for this webinar that once you've had some sales using a price list, you actually can't easily remove that. You can't revert back to standard, which is not really a big deal, but that was what I learned. Maybe there is a way, but I think you might have to uninstall some special modules, so I don't know. Once you've gone down the list, the pathway of price lists, you're probably just going to keep using price lists, basically, is a way to summarize that. So like I said, it's multiple prices on the product page. That's where you're supposed to go to handle it if you're doing this method. So if I go and I take a look at this Rhino costume right here, it does have a standard sales price right here. It's $100, and you could consider that the basic public price or maybe the MSRP or whatever you want to call it. But actually, in this tab right here for sales, now that we've enabled this method, we have this whole section over here. So this is where you can actually do multiple prices for the product. So I'm going to go ahead and hit edit, and I'm going to enter an item right here. Now, as you can see, the first field is asking, what is this price list? So this is where we get into technically price lists. You could say that this first line, this is going to pertain to our standard basic public pricing that everybody gets, which is public pricing. That is the default setting. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that real quick. And then I'm going to say that, let's say it is $100 for a minimum quantity. So what I'm showing you first is volume pricing. So I'm going to say that if you order at least 0, you're going to get this at a price of $100. Then I'm going to do another line underneath it for the same exact price list, the same public pricing scheme. And I'm going to say that it is, say, $80 if you get at least 10. See how that works? It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. And then I'll just do one third tier. And I'll say that it's $60 if you buy at least 20. And as you can see, these start and end date fields can allow you to choose a date range. So if you want to, you can say that this is seasonal pricing and it's only going to be valid during the Christmas season or something like that. But I'm going to leave that blank for now. Okay, so now that I've set these little rules right here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to make a new sale order. I'm going to choose a different customer. I'm going to say Pamela Huffington is going to order the Rhino costume. And if I choose one, it uses the price of $100. If I choose 15, it immediately goes down to $80 because public pricing says that anything over 10 gets this price. Similarly, if I suddenly change it to 25, $60. So that's how volume pricing works. It's very simple. It's very basic. What is actually going on in the behind the scenes of that is that this field right here is public price list. So those items that I created when I was editing those price list items, those volume tiers for that product, those all got saved onto a single price list called public price list. And so as long as that public price list is saved here on the sale order, anything that I do here is going to be referencing the public price list information. And it'll make a little bit more sense as we go on. And I think it'll probably be a lot clearer after we go through several examples, yeah. But that's how volume pricing is. As long as you're using that price list and it's referring to that price list, depending on what you enter, it's going to look up what the information is on that product. So since we're working with actual price lists now, you'll see that you can actually set specific pricing on a particular person too. So instead of just the public price list, which is all that we've been working with so far, I'm going to work with a different price list now. If I go back into the product, adult Rhino costume, I'm going to have another line underneath here for pricing. And I'm going to say instead of public price list, I'm going to have something for reseller pricing. And let's just say for reseller pricing, they get it for the crazy price of $5. So that means that if we're using the price list called reseller pricing, it's going to reference this amount. And if you want to, you can have volume pricing for every price list. All I would have to do is just have another line for reseller pricing and say it's a different price if they do a certain minimum. But I'm going to leave it at that for now. And like I said, you can assign it to particular people. The way that works is if you go into, say, contacts, and if I go and I take a look at this contact right here, costume distributors, I'm going to click on this tab right here, sales and purchases, which makes sense. It makes sense that you'd go there. If I go to sales and purchases, you'll see right here you can select the field for this contact of the price list. Now it's going to default to your default price list, and we'll talk about the rules in greater detail in a little bit. But you can go ahead and just click and change it to reseller pricing. Okay, so remember, this is the name of the customer, Costume Distributors Incorporated. Sounds kind of like a reseller. And see that I've selected reseller pricing. So now we go into sales and we test that out. I'm going to go ahead and make an order. I'm going to select that customer, Costume Distributors Incorporated. It immediately pulls their price list. It's a related field on the customer record. So instead of saying public price list like it has before, it now says reseller pricing. So if I choose the Rhino costume, $5. Pretty straightforward. And hopefully no crazy loopholes and hopefully nobody's scratching their head right now. I think what's really important to keep in mind is that there's an order of operations to this. I chose a customer. When I did that, it looked up their price list. And since it found that there was a price list assigned to it that wasn't just the basic standard public price list, it assigned it to this order. Then any product that you put on this thing is going to make a reference to that price list. Now, if I were to go ahead and I were to, in the middle of this, change the price list, this is really important. If I change it back to public price list in the middle of it and hit save, you'll notice that it doesn't update the product. And that's because the product pricing is selected at the time that you add the product. So if I wanted to, I could remove that and put it back on there. And you'll notice it's going to use the standard public pricing price for quantity 1. So that's what I mean about order of operations. If you've selected a price list right here, whatever you do in the order lines is going to just look at that price list. But it's not going to automatically update the pricing on all these items. So for best practices, what makes the most sense is make sure your price list is set properly on the sale order before you start adding items on the order. That's what I recommend. And it'll automatically be pulled up if it's assigned to the customer. But if you have user access to, you can go ahead and override that and change the price list on an order by order basis. So I hope that all makes sense. Hopefully it'll make more sense as we work through it. But one of the best ways to learn the nuances and the rules of price lists is to mess around with it yourself. So, you're heavily encouraged, if you're already a customer, play around in a trial or duplicate test database of yours and get more comfortable with it. Or if you're just checking out Odoo for the first time, start a trial of the sales module and play around with it. But basically, an easy way to remember in terms of what it's going to look at and the way you should proceed through a sale order is work left to right, top to bottom. If you enter a customer here, then it'll pull up their price list automatically, and that's probably what you want, price list, based off of that customer. But if you need to, and maybe there is no price list set on the customer, even though you'd want there to be, you can go ahead and click on the price list next and choose the price list, and then start adding your products. That's the recommended way. Don't add half your products and then change the price list, or else you will have to go ahead and override these things. You can always, of course, remove the products and put them back on there if you need to, though. So that is that form of price list modification. Now let's move into slightly more complicated price list work. It is going to give you the most flexibility and the most robust tool set to fiddle with. And you'll see that you can actually set up rules that are based off of all sorts of things, not just the quantity, not just the season, but also things like what is the category of product, is there a variant associated with the product, so on and so forth. And I'm going to show you that actually with price lists, actually in the last type of price list too. Either way, you can import them through a spreadsheet. We have price list import templates, and they can be really helpful because if you have thousands of products, chances are you're not going to want to create a specific line for every single one. And it's also really good to see it if you have to have your prices set up in a particular format or particular way, which I've heard called charm prices before, where it always ends in 99 or it always ends in 95 cents, something like that. You can use the formulas to set that up. So let's go back into it. Now, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to configuration settings, and I'm going to go ahead and change it to that version right here. So instead of this multiple prices per product, I'm going to click prices computed from formulas and hit save. Give it a little bit, it just needs to think. Now that we've done that, it's a different way of going about setting up your price list, basically. The recommendation is you go to Catalog in Sales, and you go to Price Lists. You can actually technically click on it from here, from Settings, but this kind of makes more sense. It's more direct. So I'm going to go to Catalog, I'm going to go to Price Lists. So we'll already see that the reseller pricing list that I'd been messing with before is in here. I also have a couple others that I set up right here. The way it works is if I go ahead, I'll just make a new one real quick. I'm going to call it Gold Member Pricing. And so that's the name of the price list. Very simple, just what you call the price list. Now, I'll talk about this part in a second, but the main thing is, the whole point of it is that you set up a bunch of items, price list items. In a way, they're rules. They're a reference guide. They're the pricing list. So if I go and I hit edit and I start working on it, there's always going to default to one little field right here, one item that says that all products get just no discount. It's basic standard pricing. That's just the default. That just means that there's no special rules, there's no special exceptions. I'm going to go ahead and remove that, and I'm going to go ahead and add an item. So for this pricing, let's just say that all products globally, that means all products, every single product that you have is going to, as you can see, have some sort of a formula or some sort of a discount or price modification here. You could specify maybe just a fixed price and say, yes, all products get are priced at $3. You'd never do that. That's very crazy. But what I'm saying here is that globally, all products will have a fixed price of $3. That's what that means. More likely what you do is maybe you'd say percentage. Maybe with this price list for gold member pricing, all products are going to get 10% off or something like that. You could do it that way if you want. Or the more complicated way is formula. And formula right here, you get to say, yeah, there's a 10% discount, but just so we don't get any weird numbers, I'm going to select a rounding method and round up to the nearest one or the nearest dollar or something like that. And if you need to, you can add an amount to it. I'll show you an example of that. It's best laid out in the documentation, actually. But you would use these tools right here if you need all of your products to end in .99 or all of your products to end in .95. Basically, you can apply a discount, and then you can add a dollar amount to it to bring it up to a certain point, and then round it maybe to the nearest .99. I think I'll just pull it up in the documentation to show how it's laid out. It definitely could be a little bit of trial and error, and it's usually the kind of thing where you'd want to maybe consult with us before you mess with it. Actually, I don't have the documentation bookmarked. But the gist of it is that you would do something like, I'm going to add $10 and round it to the nearest 99 cents or something like that. And then when you do that, then the product will end up with $9.99 or $1.99 or whatever whatever way you have it set up. So you have min margins, you have max margins, you can fiddle with those. The goal of this webinar is not to do a full training on those things. So if you have some specific pricing scheme in mind for how you need it to be laid out, either contact me or contact your consultant, or you can ask it at the end. We can try to fiddle with it. But the gist of it is that if you need your pricing to be formatted in a particular way, you can kind of list that out through here. And a very important thing is that you can base a price off of either your general public price, in other words, whatever your standard price is. In the case of the pig costume, $100, or you can base it off the cost. And so what that allows you to do is you can actually base it off of the margin and set it up such that if your product has a purchase cost of $50, you might say that you want that sell price to be based off of that so that you always have a specific margin or a minimum margin. So in other words, what the price is based off of, usually it's either just a discount off of the public pricing, whatever you have it set to it's going to be 20% off your public price. Or if you need to, you can have the price based off the cost. That way, if you have a product where the cost fluctuates a lot, if it goes up $20, $50, depending on your costing method, or if you're purchasing it a bunch over time and the cost keeps on changing, if you set up a price list so that it is basing the public sell price off of the cost, then it's always going to give you the margin that you want no matter how much the cost fluctuates. So yeah, so this is definitely, it's the most complicated way to do your pricing, but it's really great if you need set margins to always be carried no matter what the cost fluctuates to. Or it's really great if you need to have your pricing kind of structured in a particular way. That's what those formulas are for. That's what they're supposed to be for. But a couple other things related to that, though. You'll notice, and we'll get into this in a bit when we start doing the e-commerce, we have some settings right here. If you want to, you can specify whether it's usable on the website or not, so for e-commerce sales. And you can also specify a country group, and we'll show that in action a little bit. That's for international pricing. But basically, let's see what happens if I do this crazy thing right here where I say that the pricing, and instead of a global, I'm going to specify. You can either do a particular product, and I'll just choose in this case the tiger costume, or if you want to, you can do categories. So if you're grouping your products by category and you need to make a big change to the pricing of all of a particular category of product, you can just apply that here and say, yeah, I want anything in this particular category to get 20% off this month or something like that. Also variants. If you're using variants, you can have a specific pricing per variant. And if you have a ton of variants, a lot of times you'll find that it's easier to handle that through an import, through a CSV import. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just say for the tiger costume, for this particular price list, I'm going to say that it's going to have 10% off, and I am going to try to round it this way to the nearest 99. And we'll see if that works. I know, actually, I think it'll be better. It'll make more sense if we use a weirder percentage discount. So I'm going to say 7% off, and then let's round it and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a new sale order real quick. And I'm going to choose a customer. I'm going to make a new one on the fly, and I'll call it Peggy Gold Member. That's her actual name, Peggy Gold Member. And I'm going to go ahead and manually select the price list, because you could do that, Gold Member Pricing. Now, normally you'd probably have it tied to the customer record, but I just did it like so. And let's throw the tiger in there. Okay, so it's giving you a price of $74.25. If we open up the product information, we'll see that the original pricing is $80. So it did apply a discount to it of 7% off, but I think to get the rounding that I want, I'm going to go ahead and open up the price list again, and let's see what happens if we round the price list up or into the nearest dollar. Yeah, let's try that real quick. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do a new order real quick for that same person. I'm just experimenting with the rounding option because unfortunately it's a little unfamiliar to me. I'm going to go ahead and say Gold Member Pricing, and I will choose that tiger costume. Aha, it rounded it. Okay, so I just rounded to the nearest dollar. That's what it means. And so it rounded it to the nearest dollar. That's all it is. So if you have some specific way you need it to do instead, I think you would round it to the nearest 0.01, and then you might need to add or subtract a dollar if you needed it to be $73.99 or something like that. But the main thing is that we took that $80, we applied a 7% discount, and then I rounded it to the nearest dollar, and that's why we have 74. So you can kind of see how these price lists are used to give you discounts that you need. So rounding is a good idea. I do recommend it. Maybe just round to the nearest dollar in a lot of cases so that you don't get weird numbers like 73.92, that kind of thing. It's easy to do. You just say round 1.00. So that's how that works. And so like I said, you can import your price lists. All you have to do is you go to your list of price lists, and instead of creating every single one by scratch or by hand, you can click import, and then we have a template. Here's an example of what that template looks like. And as you can see, there's this top column right here. It's pretty simple, actually, considering how complicated price lists can be. This is a very basic import where you have a column for fixed price. Now, if you were doing formulas, then instead you'd use a column where you were talking about the discount percentage and maybe a column where you're using the rounding error. I just chose a pretty simple one, but as you can see, it lists the products, and then it shows what the prices are. If there's a minimum quantity, it's right here. So you can easily fiddle with all of your prices here in an import list and then just bring them in. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about two channels that you can use to make use of sales prices besides just what we've been doing on the sale order page. First off, e-commerce. You can sell your products through an online store if you're using the Odoo website and e-commerce tool. And with price lists, the same rules apply as what we have just already covered. In other words, you can tie a price list to a customer, or you can maybe tie a price list to a country code or some sort of international location, something like that. It works really well for international pricing, I would say, typically. We ourselves at Odoo.com, we use price lists to give people different pricing depending on what continent they're in. And also, the pricing can be treated as discounts if you want. And so I'm going to show how that is kind of displayed. So let's go into it. And I have another window that I'm going to jump over to right now. This is the website. This is the front-end website version of what we've been working with so far. And I am going to go ahead and log out of it. Because right now I'm logged in as my user. But in this case now, I'm not logged in at all. I'm just browsing. I'm going to go to shop, and it's just going to use the default public pricing if you have it set up this way. All I'm seeing is these are the standard public prices. There's no price list assigned right here. I'm not logged in. I'm just browsing. What you can do, though, is if we go into the back end, if you go to price lists, it says I expired. Oh, this is going to be hard, actually, on this one. Okay. Give me just a second. I just need to log in. Yeah, because technically they're both incognito windows, but they're both borrowing the same cookies. So that's kind of tricky. It's kind of hard to do back and forth on it. It's okay. I can do it. Okay, so if I go into it and I go to my price list on the back end, let's say I want to do international specific, country specific pricing. If you go to this one right here, this price list I created called Bulgarian pricing, I basically chose a country group, and I said that if you're using the country of Bulgaria, because Odoo has all the countries listed, and the customer is detected as being part of that country, it will apply this discount, and I'll say it's going to be a 30% discount or something like that. And so now that I've done that, just real quick, I'm going to go ahead. What's the best way to do it? The best way is if I take myself and pretend I'm a customer. This is my user. And I'm going to assign a price list. Actually, no, I'm going to specify a country. I'm not going to assign a price list. I'm going to choose a country right here. I'm going to call it Bulgaria and apply that. So basically all I did is as soon as I chose this country and said that this user, this contact is of this country, it automatically applies the pricing, the price list for that. So as soon as you change the country, it'll detect that and do it. And it's the same thing on the website. So if I go ahead and I sign in and say I'm creating an account, and log in like so, on the front end, pretending I'm a customer, and go to the front end again now that I've logged in. And if I go to shop, it'll display them with my specific pricing. So it's no longer $150 for the pig costume, it's 30% off, so it's $105. Now, if you have never bought anything before and it detects the IP address of your country, you can also have it detect that and then give you the pricing automatically. So you can do it that way too online through online e-commerce price lists. If I go back to the back end real quick, one thing that you can do with your pricing, and if you're doing this kind of price detection, you might go to the price list and you might say that you'd prefer it to, instead of just overriding the price, you might say that you want it to show the public price and show it as a discount to the customer. So if I go and do that and change it to that method, and I do a quick refresh right here, now, it's showing it to me like so with $105 as the price right there. Here, maybe if I do another refresh on it, no, it's not doing it right now. So the problem is I prepared it on my own computer where I had a completely separate window, but then I'm using the marketing computer right now, so it's kind of being thrown for a loop. So we can explore it in greater detail if you want to talk to me one-on-one about this. If e-commerce pricing and the way that e-commerce pricing is very important to you, I encourage you to reach out and talk to me about it, because I can show you using my own computer. Typically what's supposed to be showing right here is a standard public price. Oh, there it is. It's just X'd out for some reason. I think it's maybe the formatting that I used on it. But as you can see, here's the public pricing. It's $150. It's scratched out, but it's showing me what my pricing is. That's kind of wacky. It might be related to my theme. It might be related to, I'm not sure exactly, but in this case, normally it'll actually show this list, in clear font, and you can read it and you can see it. But the idea is that you have different ways to show the pricing. It can either just override it, or it can let you know that it's a discount, and it works out pretty well. Once again, it's the same basic fundamental rules as the back end. It's that you can sign in as a customer, or you can say what your country is, and then based on that information, it will detect and apply a price list to you, and it will either show you just an overrided price, or it will show you what the public price is crossed out and what price you're getting as basically a discount. And so additionally, if you want, you can also enter a promo code, and then upon checkout, you can enter that promo code, and that will allow you to get that price list. But kind of running out of time here, so I'm not going to drive through that real quick. But the main thing that I want to point out is that it's the same exact rules, it's on the website. And the way we recommend that you set it up is that by default, if you're not logged in, you just use your standard public pricing for your basic products. And then you can, if you want to, assign specific pricing to a particular customer, or you might have it country specific, or both. So finally, the other way that I want to showcase how price lists are used is through point of sale. And once again, same rules apply here too. The only real difference is that you can also make it terminal specific or point of sale cash register specific. So you set a specific price list per terminal. And then depending on how you want it to be set up, you can make it so that the person operating that terminal might be able to manually select a price list as well. So, but you might want to restrict that. So I'll show you that. If I go to the back end of this database right here, and I go into point of sale. So you'll have different sessions, different terminals. There's point of sale webinars you can watch if you want a greater in-depth understanding of how we handle those. But if we go into the settings of it and scroll down, you'll see right here under pricing that you can decide whether or not you want to make use of price lists in point of sale. If I select that, then it's basically a little different than other use cases. It's different than e-commerce because you can actually choose which price lists are eligible and which ones are not. So if it's something that's online specific, you're not going to want to choose it here typically. But I'm just going to say reseller pricing is selectable and gold member pricing is selectable. And then you'll choose which one is the default. And by default, it's going to be public price list. But I'm just going to go ahead and save that real quick. Now that I've set that up and said that we can use these, we're eligible for those. Let's go and start a new session. And I think it's really important to point out that for point of sale, generally across the board, if there's any settings changes you want to make or configuration changes that you need to make to the point of sale, you need to make sure that your session is closed before you can do that and then open a new session. In other words, you can't change the settings on it halfway through an open session or an open cash register. Okay, so now I'm in here. Here's point of sale. And you'll see that we can choose items. I'll choose, I don't know, the pig costume again, and maybe a jellyfish costume. And then what you can do is right here, you can select a price list as long as you have user access to it. And I'll say that actually it's a gold member pricing. But just like we saw before, the rules are you can't choose a price list halfway through the process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that. I'm going to remove that. Now that I've chosen gold member pricing and I choose these things right here. Oh, that's right. I think I only had gold member pricing specified for the tiger costume. That's why. Everything else is still public, but the tiger costume is $74. So that's the order of operations. You'd want to choose the price list first before you start entering the items in here. Okay, so there's that. And then, of course, it's also customer specific. So if you choose costume distributors right here and say, yes, that's the customer, and then you start adding items in here, you'll notice that the adult rhino costume gets $5 because that's the reseller pricing, as you can see right here. So once again, you can either choose the contact and it'll choose a price list for you, or you can manually choose the price list. It's the exact same thing as on the back end. It's just what I'm doing here is that you can restrict which price lists are selectable on the point of sale terminal, and you can choose a specific default price list on the terminal too. So if you have some terminals in one country and some terminals in another country, and those countries get different pricing, that's one way you might want to do it, or maybe it's state by state or county by county, whatever. You can specify it that way. And then the rest of it just works the exact same way as what we saw before. So that's pretty much it. There's one last thing that I just want to cover real quick in relation to price lists, and that's just a couple of additional rules that I got from one of our implementation consultants that they shared with me. And some of it's obvious, but some of it is worth repeating and explaining. First off, in case you hadn't already realized that you get one price list per order. You can't choose multiple price lists. You can't say that there's a price list applied to several of the items and then another price list applied to other items. If you need to, you can manually override the price on a product by product basis, but the gist of it is that if you just wanted to reference a list of prices, it's one price list per order, whether it's e-commerce or point of sale or whatever. As far as order of operations go, we already kind of covered it, but there's always one. It's always going to look at the customer first. That's the first rule of it. It's going to say what is the price list assigned to the customer, and then once you've selected that customer, that's the price list that's going to get used by default. So that's always going to have the top of the line of the hierarchy. If no price is specified anywhere, it's always going to use the list price. And actually, the list price, I should point out, if we go into our list of our prices, or of our different price lists right here, it's not just because it's called public price list that it is used. It's also because, if we go to our list of price lists right here, it's because it's listed at the top. And that's actually a sequence, if you want to look at it that way. This becomes the default price list because it's at the top of the list. If you need to change that, you can do that, but whatever's at the top of the list is going to be the default. In other words, if you create a new customer, it's going to use that price list unless you specify otherwise. And that's how that works. That's kind of the hierarchy there. This is a little bit complicated sounding, but not too crazy when you think about it. If for whatever reason, if you have a product and you have a bunch of different price list items listed, kind of like we saw for the Rhino, if I open up that Rhino real quick, this thing right here, and go to this page. I removed that. I removed that setting. Now we're in basic price list again. Here, let me switch it back over to that while I explain this. Basically, if you have several different price items or price rules per product, it's going to always select the one that is most specific to the order. In other words, quantity and date for one thing, and if the specificity level, of the products is identical. In other words, they have the same quantity and they have the same exact date range, or the date range applies to both of them. It's actually always going to choose the one where the price is higher. It's always going to choose the price list rule for whatever the highest price is. In other words, if you have two rules for one product and they both say, if I go into the jellyfish real quick and I click on here and I say that for public price list, the price is $20 if they get a minimum quantity 0. And then for whatever reason, you end up with another line right here that says it's $15, once again, for the same minimal quantity. Sometimes this can happen with overlapping date ranges. Sometimes it's just an error from data import, whatever. It's always going to choose the one with the highest price. It's not necessarily the one that's listed higher in this case. It's just it's going to choose the one with the highest price. So it's not like it's going to break the system if you accidentally have two rules. It's just, yeah, that's what's going to happen. That's the default behavior. And then, once again, like we talked about before, if you change the price list in the middle of an order, it's not going to replace the prices on your products on the order that have already been added to the order. But any new item that you add after you've changed the price list will reflect the change of the new price list. So chances are you might use one price list for the first 5 items that you add to an order and then change it to a different price list and then add 5 more items. You could do it that way. It's a little funky, but you could do it. And then finally, like we said, if you save a contact without any price list selected, it's always going to use the one that's at the top of the list. So if I just make a new contact real quick, and I'll just call it new customer, and I hit save and I haven't selected anything, once again, it has automatically selected a price list. You have to have some price list assigned to your contacts. You can't get away from it. Yeah, those are the rules that I wanted to just sort of summarize. So yeah, getting back into the slides, that's all we got really. Like I said, if you need to, you can reach out to us directly. You can email, you can schedule a meeting with me. And yeah, I'll just turn it over to Noel. Noel, do you have any questions from people?
Yeah, actually, it looks like you covered everything pretty well. Don't have any huge questions here. I'm going to give people a last minute to ask any question while we wrap up here. I'd like to remind everyone that if you came in late or if you'd like to watch this presentation again, you can use this same link that you're using to watch this video now to watch it again, fast forward, rewind, watch it at your convenience whenever it makes sense for you. We still have a few more Odoo tour events before Odoo XP in October. You can find all of that information at odoo.com/events. And if you have any other questions that perhaps may not relate to this particular webinar or topic, you can always send us an email to webinars@odoo.com, or if you want to speak with Brett directly. Brett, what is your email address?
It's bhy@odoo.com. Let's see. It's going to take me a while to scroll back into it. Yeah, bhy@odoo.com. And
It's actually there at the end.
Ta-da! Okay.
Very, very good. Well, great. Then I think that's going to cover it for us. So until next time, this is Odoo Live signing off.
Bye.